I'm joined now by Tatiana Kukhareva, live from Moscow. We also have Olga, who continues to be with us. I want to get both these voices for just a moment here on India Today, because this is a big story. We're talking about Kyiv. It's the center of attention right now. Tatiana, the Ukrainian chief of the general staff has just talked about the Russian forces regrouping and preparing, along with Chechnya and Luhansk militias, for a big final assault on Kyiv. How do you see this statement coming out from the Ukrainian military headquarters?
Well, you know, as I've said before, and as I will continue to say, that all statements coming from Kyiv have to be divided by two at least, normally. It is an ongoing military operation, so the point here is that obviously the military does not announce what it's going to do in the middle of a military operation, because that's, you know, generally not how things are done. So one thing I would very much like to, to point out is that, you're saying Chechen militias, but the Chechen battalions are very much part of the Russian military, because the Chechens are essentially, Chechnya is a part of Russia. So it's not a militia whatsoever. Those are very well-trained troops that make part of our regular army. I'd say that, I'm personally very wary of any warning coming from, be that Kyiv or the United States. It was just like, it was with the announcement of the what they called invasion. They announced it for 2 weeks prior to the fact, actually. But I'm not sure we will know about the movement of the Russian troops until it actually happens.
Okay.
And I would very much warn against, any sort of, because, for obvious reasons, that would be used to kind of try and pressure NATO into something that it simply cannot do. You spoke just now about the declaring of the no-fly zone, and the banners in Kyiv that say so. But that's the problem, though, isn't it? The fact that for some reason the Ukrainian government told its citizens that NATO is in a position to declare a no-fly zone, when in fact it's not.
Okay.
You can only declare a no-fly zone over something that that is that you consider a place of combat, and you actually go in there. And NATO has said for all this time, and even if
just on this issue of the no-fly zone, let's just take this one issue at a time. Olga, do you want to respond to Tatiana on the issue of this no-fly zone? She says that the Ukrainian government is misleading the people on that front.
Yeah, I would like to respond also, telling that I do hope that Russian television will be the part, together with Russian government on the tribunal. But speaking about the no-fly zone, what I would like to say is that Ukrainian government asks not only for NATO to cover our sky, but there is the other option. The other option is to give us more planes. There are jets and planes which Ukrainian pilots can use, and these are former Soviet-made planes, and they are still in the arsenal of Poland and Poland and Slovakia. So these countries, as I know, these countries just need to have some support from NATO because if they give these planes, these jets to Ukraine. And Ukraine will then be able to shelter our sky ourselves. So this is the other option. There is also the option which my colleague from Ukraine mentioned with the foreign battalion. So if, for example, some foreign fighters can come to Ukraine, these are foreign pilots, we also can have the NATO class or NATO style jets, which they will then be able to use, and this is the third way to shelter the sky. So,
Tatiana, would Moscow see those other options that Olga is describing also as acts of war? If aircraft come in from other countries or foreign battalions in Ukraine?
No, that's not an act of war.
Foreign battalions are, without a doubt, without question, if it's an official battalion sent by a third party, then of course that third party is getting involved in a war. That's not about how Moscow sees it. That's about how these things work in general. It's literally, it's not even up to discussion, you know. Although some countries have already authorized for people to, but on their own accord, though, you know, if they want to go fight, they can. And that in itself, it's already, you know, it's very worrisome, because we know just how many people were seeking shelter in Europe, you know, back in the days, the terrorists from the Chechen Republic that fled after the wars. You know, so those people might potentially join the fight. In the meantime, if any third party officially authorizes an actual part of their military to come into Ukraine, well, how else would you see it then, if not a participation in a conflict?
Ukrainian government doesn't say this is not an official part. These are people who are coming here on their own will and their own desire to defend democracy and to follow the all free world. This is what is and what Ukrainian government is speaking about. This is about the Ukrainian foreign battalion, those people who are already in Ukraine. So this is the issue. But I would love to stop, because I can't speak now with Russian journalists and what are they doing. Sorry. Thank you, India.
Olga, just one more question. Can I just ask you one more question? I wanted to ask you, Olga, about the ceasefire. I wanted to ask you about the ceasefire while Tatiana is here, because the general view from Ukraine is that these ceasefires are not actually happening. Like, for example, in Kyiv, yes, even though Russia has announced a ceasefire, the shelling and the missile attacks are still happening. I want you to have your say, and I want Tatiana to respond to that. Olga, you first, on the ceasefires.
Look, on the ceasefires, the day before yesterday, the ceasefire was announced in Mariupol, but then no one can get out of there. And the situation is they're on the brink of humanitarian catastrophe. Yesterday, the ceasefire was announced and the family was just killed while foreign journalists were seeing that and taking pictures, the family with children. So there also was the position, I guess, from the Russian government to announce a ceasefire and that the humanitarian corridor should move to Russia. How those people who are resisting Russia could move to Russia? This is just impossible. Sorry, but
we're not talking about
Russia doesn't just like.
We're talking about civilian population who's not
resisting. This shelling starts all the time, and when the humanitarian corridor is announced, then the either shelling or shootings, and we have like proofs with videos from not only from Ukrainian correspondents but from foreign correspondents, and that's the main issue with that. But we really need humanitarian corridors, especially from Mariupol, from also Kyiv region, where people are saying without electricity, heating, water.
That is a general view from Ukraine. Tatiana, do you want to respond to that? That these ceasefires are only on paper; they're not really happening on the ground.
The problem with journalists usually is that they can't, you know, it's the general sense of panic that's been being kind of, you know, harnessed in this conflict. If we're saying that the ceasefires are not being observed, and they're not being observed, but they're not being observed by the Ukrainian side, I'm sorry, but if you're a journalist, you can't quite say this. Look, this rocket is Russian. I see it. It says it has Russian markings on it. It's not, again, not how it works. The Russian military yesterday reported, if I'm not mistaken, 172 cases of that ceasefire.
Tatiana, sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you continue your point. I just want to introduce onto our coverage Hanna Shelest. She's editor-in-chief of Ukraine Analytica. Welcome, Hanna. We were just talking, since you've entered right in the middle of the conversation, just to update you, Tatiana is talking about the war of claims over whether ceasefires are actually being implemented properly. Tatiana, finish your point you were making. You were saying that the Ukrainians are not following the ceasefire. Go ahead, finish your point. I'll get Hanna to respond to you.
Of course. You know, the Russian military has claimed from the very beginning and continues to say that, you know, the safety of civilians has been the utmost priority. This is what happened in every city that they took control of. They gave up humanitarian aid straight away. They're doing extensively whatever they can to prevent the civilian population from being harmed. And then, for people from within those besieged cities to come in and say, look, we're being shelled at, but you don't know who's shelling you. We see people who get out of Mariupol, civilian people, who then go on camera and they say, look, we were fired at by the Ukrainian security forces. Are those people lying?
Let's find out, Hanna.
Are we going back
Hanna,
to the
this is a big claim that's being made. Tatiana from Moscow says that the ceasefire is not being followed by the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainian military is firing on people when they try and get out of cities like Mariupol. How would you respond to Tatiana? Hanna.
I'm just wondering, do you have Tatiana being delusioned or with the propaganda working for the government? That's nice to see it in Moscow, in the home, and talking about complete nonsense, because you can just see the photos and videos from cities of Mariupol, Mykolaiv, or Kherson, or Chernihiv, to understand how Russian armed forces are protecting civilians, bombing just the civilian quarters. My best friend from Chernihiv spent her night trying to save her house from the shelling being in the basement, and it been just in the middle of the night. From Mariupol, my friends don't have connections with their families for 2 days, just no mobile connections, nothing, and nobody can evacuate. And it is not Ukrainian journalists who are claiming that the ceasefire is violated. It is the United Nations that confirmed yesterday that the roads been mined and the shellings from the Russian side being continued, including, by the way, yesterday videos how the rockets being sent from Novorossiysk, just from the Russian territory. And it seems to me that now, with the time when we have so many foreign journalists reporting from the territory, when we have so many proofs of videos, not just photos that you can claim that they are photoshopped, when you see all those photos of the destroyed, completely civilian territories, like 211 schools in Ukraine being completely destroyed by the rockets, including cruise missiles. Sorry, but that is, you need to be not just cynical, but the devil advocate to say that Russian armed forces is trying to protect civilians. I'm really wondering what type of the civilians they're trying to protect, considering all those destructions happening exactly in the civilian territories. Few people that Tatiana just claimed that been reporting they left Mariupol and how they are assisted, that's probably a wonderful demonstration of how the movie industry working in the Russian Federation. Russians tried to stage the same in Kherson town on the south, bringing 40 buses with the civilians from Crimea and making videos, but people in Kherson came with the blue and yellow flags, the national flags of Ukraine, so just to debunk this propaganda and to show that the city of Kherson...
Tatiana, Hanna says it's delusional to say that the Russians are protecting civilians in these ceasefire areas. Respond, Tatiana.
Of course she does. And this is the classic, the classic type of, again, propaganda coming out from the Ukrainian side, which we've been listening to this whole time.
I'm sorry,
look, you're saying that somebody came over from Crimea.
Propaganda when we have 2 million people left the country, destroyed the cities and killed people. Sorry, but that is not the journalism. That is just to give the word to those who support the war and war crimes in the middle of Europe nowadays.
Are you done? I don't think she's coming back, because this is exactly how they behave. It's accusations, and then you go, poof, I'm not talking to you anymore, your propaganda. They don't want to listen. They just want for you guys to believe the claims that, oh, look, we're putting in people from Crimea. The world is being observed by satellites right nowadays. If somebody drove people in from Crimea, the whole world would have known about it. Everybody would have satellite images. You know that as well as I do. Look, we're talking about the population, even the southeast of Ukraine, those Russian-speaking cities. I've actually been to Kherson. This is where I first encountered that lovely Western Ukrainian nationalism that we've been talking about this whole time, that where you could literally get, if you encountered people coming in from West Ukraine, and they would go there to see the sea, you would get beat up just because you're Russian, just because you have a Moscow accent. And this is a sad fact the relation between the Western Ukrainians and even the Eastern Ukrainians. In the meantime, look, it's a very simple thing to say, look, this is staged. These people are not real people. This is the difference in the approaches. We're just stating the facts that we get from our side. Our journalists, and those are as well, they're not just Russian journalists. You have Indian journalists on the other side as well, if I'm not mistaken. At least a couple of channels do. Those people who come in and say, look, we were fired at from the Ukrainian side. They're doing everything to prevent us from leaving the city. And that makes sense. This is why, some foreign nationals still remain trapped in those cities. You know that. They're not being allowed to leave. Okay. Why would they be? Again, you're saying that, well, not you, but, the lovely Ukrainian shouting people are saying that, this is Russian provocation. Russia has offered to evacuate those people for so much time. The Russian president has spoken. He's even spoken to the French president in an effort to make Kyiv, let them leave. They're literally using them as a protection, as a guarantee that there's no assault on the city. Although, again, if there have been an assault on the cards, that an army as strong, they would have gone in already. If they didn't want to protect civilian population, then why stay outside? You just bomb the city from upstairs and you destroy it, and then you control it. It's easy. Killing people is very easy in this scenario. We all know it because we've all seen how it's done by the American army. And trust me, the Russian army is very capable of doing that. Why would they stay outside the cities then?
Okay. One final question to you, Tatiana, very specific question. Is the takeover of Kyiv imminent? Is it going to happen? We're talking on day 13 of this crisis, of this conflict. Is the invasion and the taking over of Kyiv the next big thing that's going to happen on the ground, in your view?
Well, look, this is where it gets tricky for me because I'm not a military expert. Again, and this is why I am personally, I am pleading to journalists all over the world to literally stick to the facts. The fact of the matter is that Kyiv is surrounded. Whether they're going in or not, I'm afraid that's down to the military plan that is in place. In my personal opinion, I don't see it happening just like this because, again, we've seen pictures, we've seen videos of Grad missiles being put in places in a very densely populated area inside Kyiv. So there's no way to kind of go in there and avoid civilian casualties. And, end of the day, look at the both Ukrainians that you've invited here. They already hate us. We don't need any more civilian casualties. We didn't need them to begin with, but unfortunately, the 8 years of brainwashing that the country sustained. I mean, in Kyiv, if you would come in, early, even before this whole situation, you could literally read on on cars, they put stickers on cars like all Russians need to be killed or something,
Okay.
Like very aggressive anti-Russian slogans that you would read on cars. And there's, again,
Tatiana,
if we're
thank
talking
you.
about whether they're going to go in.
Yeah, I hear you. And we have all of those images on air as well. And, like so few on the ground, India Today is reporting the facts. We're reporting what we see. We're in the conflict zone. We've got military experts on the ground as well. So we report the facts. We're trying to sift through many of the claims being made on both sides. As you saw in the last 20 minutes, we attempted to have a debate here, but emotions are obviously running high between both sides. It's not something we didn't foresee, but we were hoping for some kind of a discussion. But yeah, we'll try that again in a few hours maybe. Tatiana, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good to see you for being here on India Today. Thanks very much for that.